recently been reflecting on like the mother-daughter dynamic that I had and how I've heard a lot of bad experiences with black moms and black daughters. And I kind of just wanted to discuss my perspective because if you don't know, I graduated with my master's degree, and just that whole college journey and college experience was like a really rough one for me. And I graduated years after my peers, but it was all for reasons that I feel like weren't my fault. So let's just jump right into it, right? So if you don't know, I was born into the foster care system, literally from birth, 2 days old, put into the foster care system, and then I was into a foster care family 4 days later. So I didn't really have a bond with my mother. And even though I would spend time with her, years later when I was like 4 or 5, I would spend time with her. I didn't like it. I didn't like the time with her. I absolutely thought she was just like mean. She just didn't give off that motherly feeling that I was used to with my foster mother, who y'all just know I just call my mother now. And my mother was the friendly aunt. She was the friendly friend to everyone else but her own children. And people couldn't and still can't fathom why all 6 of her children don't talk to her. There's literally 6 of us, and we all have our own experiences and negative experiences and trauma associated with her. And people just cannot see why, like, none of her children talk to her. And this is not a space of me bashing her. It's more of making sure that I share my experience and my perspective, because I know a lot of black women kind of go through this as well. And I see that there are great relationships that black mother and daughters have, but that wasn't my experience, and I love to see it. And I see how my sisters are now having better experiences with their daughters and how they're changing the narrative. And personally for me, like, that's huge, that's important, that's what I want for my own child. So one of the ways that it really went bad was that my first year in college, I was 18. I went away to school. Of course, you need your parents' tax information. So I ended up asking her for her tax information, and I used it my first year. And I might have misplaced the tax forms, the tax papers the following year. And she basically was just like, I'm not giving it to you anymore. And I'm like, well, I needed to go to college. And I don't think she cared. I absolutely don't think she cared that I needed those papers to go to college. And it was just like, well, what? Like, I need it for college. Like, even if you don't want to give them to me, at least do the application online. At least help me out. And she was adamant on the, no, you lost the papers. And I'm just like, okay, all right. Like, I couldn't do anything. So I ended up telling her, like, it had gotten me to the point where I was so mad. And I'm not a disrespectful child. I'm not a disrespectful person. But I literally just told her, like, I'm going to graduate without you. Like, some way, somehow, I'm going to graduate without you. You're not going to stop my journey. You're not going to stop my progress. And she basically told me, I'm going to punch you in the face. And I have never seen that lady since then. Like, I've never seen her since then, because if you are okay telling your child that you can punch her in the face off of the simple fact that she wants to go to college, right? Like, I grew up in the hood. I grew up around people who not a lot of still my family members haven't gone to college. Like, I grew up in a space where you should be proud to have your child go to college. And there was something there, and I don't know what it was, but she was just not okay with it. And so I hadn't spoken to my mother from maybe like 19 to, I'm gonna give it like 27. 10 years, like over 10 years, or 10 years where I was just like, I don't have anything to say to you. We don't have a good relationship already. You're making the relationship even worse than what it is. And like, at this point, there's nothing better that I can personally do. Like, this is not gonna work for us. So we tried to make amends. So I have 5 other siblings, and one is incarcerated, but we had all jumped on a call with her, like a FaceTime call, just trying to, and I can personally say I don't think it went about the right way. I think I would do it a little bit differently, but we were just personally trying to share our experience with her, and she did not want to take accountability for anything. Like, absolutely nothing. Like, we would say something and it was just hit with something else. And it was such a defensive conversation. And then with other siblings, it just got extremely negative, and it ended up being pointless. So for me, it was just like, this ain't work either. Like, we tried, it didn't work. Me and my siblings all have different relationships as well, because we all grew up in the foster care system. So none of us have the same experience. But I wish I could show y'all the picture. I don't want to put my siblings on blast, but if you see the picture, when she said something, we were all like, how could you say this as a mother? But that didn't work. So 10 years later, after telling me she's going to punch me in my face, not talking for 10 years, try to make amends, it didn't work. So when I graduated last week, I started to think, like, what would you say to her now? What would the conversation look like for you now? And personally, for me, I'm not sure if I've been toggling back between, like, do I want to have a conversation and sit down with her, and what would that look like? But for me right now, I really want to just be able to see her experience, like hear her experience. I don't think my mother has ever gotten to tell her story. She's in like her 60s already. I don't think she has ever gotten to tell her story. I don't think anyone knows her story. I don't think her children know her story. Like, we know, and we kind of joke about like how she was addicted to drugs, but no one knows her life experiences. And I think when you are holding all of that in, holding all that back, or trying to forget it, or haven't healed from it, I think that all plays a part in how you raise your children, right? It can either go really well and you change the perspective for your children, or it can go really wrong. And in our case, I feel like it went really wrong. She was hard. She was cold. She was fun to everybody else, to her kids. It was just not nice. It was not a good experience for her. But if I had to talk to her today, I want to hear her story. I want to hear it in full. I want to hear it with truth. I want to hear it with with her being able to just say everything without her feeling like I'm going to judge her, because I don't judge anybody anymore. I understand people's circumstances. I understand people's perspective. I understand why people do the things that they do. And as an adult, as a grown-ass woman now, I can sit down and say, I want to have a conversations with you, because if anything, I want you to be able to get out where you weren't able to get out for over 60 years of your life, right? I want to be the person who has a listening ear for you. So now I'm really going back and forth with, do I reach out? Do I reach out? Do I reach out? And I'm still toggling back and forth with it, but my spirit is leaning towards do it, because I want her to be able to express herself. And for me lately healing for me lately has looked like acknowledging that I don't know her story, acknowledging that I can't change her. I can't change her perspective. I can't change her not knowing how to be a mom, acknowledging all of those things and giving grace to her as well, because 20-year-old Selma wasn't given no grace. 20-year-old Selma wasn't given no type of grace. 20-year-old Selma was like, you said you was going to punch me in my face. Well, at the end of the day, I don't ever have to talk to you again. But I see, and I'm blessed to say I have two mother experiences. So my foster mother, who I grew up with all my life, who's just my mother, like I got that experience of a mother-daughter relationship where it was just love, like just pouring into me, just there for me. Like when I turned 18, when I went away to school, she funded all those things. I don't even know how, but she made sure I had everything I needed. When I lived at home in my 20s, it was never you have to pay a bill. It was never any of these things. But growing up with my birth mother, it was all of those things, right? It was, oh, you got a job, you got to give me money. And it's like, I don't even live with you, ma'am, I don't even live with you. And why are you asking me for money at the tender age of like 21, right? Like I'm not even here with you. But having both of those relationships allow me to see what a mother and daughter relationship should look like and what a mother and daughter relationship shouldn't look like. And it's going to help me as I also just go along in my journey, hopefully being a mom to a daughter and changing the narrative, because I see how my sisters were able to change the narrative and I now also want to change them. So healing is a process, and sometimes healing involves still being mad. Sometimes healing involves saying why. Sometimes healing involves all of those things still because you're still battling them. But personally for me, I think I'm at a space where I just want to hear her story. And I think it's important for me to hear her story and empathize with her and be compassionate, because I don't think she was given that compassion.